They found the first body at the edge of the creek, face down, rifle half in the water, webbing blown open by shrapnel. The Viet Cong platoon leader crouched beside him, eyes flicking from the corpse to the tree line. The air still smelled of explosives and burned vegetation. Somewhere, a wounded man was breathing in short, wet gasps. He looked for cartridge cases, for footprints, for sign of a large enemy force. There was almost nothing. A few boot marks in the mud, already softening in the heat. The faint impressions of elbows where someone had lain prone, a strip of green tape torn from a magazine. No piles of brass, no heavy tracks, no sign of a company fight. He moved on, deeper into the kill zone. More bodies. Men who had been in column along the creek, caught in open ground. Some still knelt where they'd been a moment before the explosions, their last movement unfinished. Others lay tangled in the roots, as if thrown there by an invisible hand. On the forebank, he found the craters, small, neat, directional. Claymores, command detonated. He imagined the scene. His men walking, relaxed, weapons slung. The sun glinting off the water. Then from nowhere, the flat, brutal crack of shaped charges and rifles firing together from perfect cover. He stood very still, listening. The jungle had already gone back to normal. Insects, birds, a monkey screeching somewhere upslope. No helicopters, no distant shouting in a foreign language, no crashing retreat through the bush. Whoever had done this had killed fast, then vanished. Later, the battalion staff would brief him. Not Americans, Australians, and men from New Zealand with them. Small team, very effective. 2 Australians, 2 Kiwis. They stayed only minutes, left before you even formed your counterattack. 2 Australians, 2 Kiwis. 1 enemy, who in this place, on this day, never stood a chance. This is the story of an ANZAC 4-man patrol, the kind of team the Viet Cong learned to fear most. Phuoc Tuy Province again, the Australians' patch. In the maps in Task Force headquarters, it's just a shape. Coastline, a few towns, a line of highway, a constellation of numbered hills inland. On the ground, it's a mosaic of war. Lowlands of rice paddies and villages, rubber plantations with their neat rows of trees and red earth, patchy bush where the old French estates have surrendered to scrub. Then deeper inland, the jungle. That layered mix of bamboo, tall timber, vines, and elephant grass that eats sound and light both. The ground is never simple. 1 minute you're on firm laterite, boots biting well. The next, you're in black, waterlogged soil that sucks at your soles and hides roots like tripwires. Small streams cut through it all, their banks slick with mud and algae, their edges natural choke points where trails converge and men must expose themselves. In the early morning, mist hangs in the low places. Under the canopy, the air is still and heavy, the kind that clings to your skin and turns every movement into work. The jungle has its own noise discipline. The background hum, cicadas, birds, the rustle of leaves covers almost everything. A single snapped twig can be lost in it. A careless metal clink cannot. Smell matters here. Wood smoke from a hidden cookhouse. Soap on a body that washed where it shouldn't. The faint sour odor of too many men living in too tight a space for too long. For the Viet Cong, this is home ground. They know the old French tracks, the hidden fords in the creeks, the best places to lay mines on the highway, and the least visible paths between villages. Their bases sit just far enough off the obvious routes to be safe from casual patrols, yet close enough to strike and vanish. For most foreign soldiers, this terrain is an enemy. For a handful of Australians and New Zealanders trained to move in small teams, it becomes something else. A puzzle to read, a system to exploit, a living, breathing character in every operation they run. In this province, the Americans fight the way their doctrine teaches. Battalions sweep, companies cordon and search. Armor rumbles along roads and through the edges of rubber. Helicopters beat the air overhead, dropping riflemen into LZs cut from the jungle by rotor wash and explosive charges. Firepower is their comfort. A contact begins and radios light up. Artillery, gunships, tactical air. The sky and horizon become part of the infantryman's toolkit. Against formed units, against bunkers that stand and fight, that combination is devastating. Against small, elusive guerrilla sections who slip away at the first sign of major contact, it's less decisive. The Australians arrive with different ghosts in their doctrine. Korea, Malaya, Borneo. The men planning their operations remember long, quiet patrols, rain, leeches, an enemy who almost never shows himself in strength unless he chooses the moment. They know that artillery and air power are tools, but that neither replaces eyes on the ground. So they form their own sharp edge. The Australian SAS Regiment. 6-man patrols, 4-man patrols, inserted by helicopter or on foot, left for days in enemy-held country to watch, to listen, to choose when and whether to fire. Around them orbit other ANZAC elements, infantry, trackers, sappers. Among those infantry are New Zealanders, Kiwis from battalions integrated into Australian units, bringing with them their own experience of rough country and bush skills learned at home. Sometimes, when a job needs quiet men with steady nerves, a patrol is built with care. 2 SAS troopers, 2 New Zealand infantrymen hand-picked for their fieldcraft and temperament. 4 men. Between them, multiple radios, years of jungle experience, and an understanding that their power does not come from how loudly they can fight, but from how precisely they can choose when to fire.
The Australians in this patrol are products of the SAS selection and training system. Marches, navigation, survival, weapons, radio drill, a culture that prizes calm over volume, competence over swagger. They've been taught to move as if the jungle is listening, to see patterns in the chaos, old tracks versus new, deliberate cuts versus storm damage, the tiny cues that say a supposedly empty valley isn't empty at all. Malaya taught their instructors that 4 men, properly led and disciplined, can exert control over an astonishing amount of ground. Borneo added lessons about steep terrain, river crossings, and the tactical uses of bad weather. The New Zealanders come from a different path. Infantry companies attached to Australian battalions, patrols through scrub and rubber, long days on cordon and search, standing in wet paddies at night, listening for movement. They are hunters in a quieter sense. Some grew up in the bush back home, following animal sign, moving in rough country with minimal fuss. What sets them apart is not nationality, but attitude. They are the ones who don't fold under discomfort, who remain alert after 10 hours in the rain, who don't complain when told the patrol will be longer, the insertion riskier, the extraction uncertain. When an SAS troop commander looks for extra rifles to bolster a particularly sensitive job, these are the Kiwis he asks for by name. The 4 trained together before this mission. They learn each other's rhythms, who moves faster, who's better on the radio, who can sketch accurately under pressure, who has the steadiest hands for claymore firing cable and detonators. By the time they board the helicopter, they're not Australians and New Zealanders. They're just a 4-man patrol. and the jungle doesn't care which flag they wear. You're third in line. Ahead of you, the patrol commander, an Australian sergeant, moves with the easy, unhurried pace of someone who has done this too many times to waste energy. Behind him, the Kiwi point man checks every step, eyes scanning ground and foliage with equal care. Behind you, the other New Zealander covers the rear, pausing every few minutes to listen back down the line, watching for the faintest hint of someone ghosting your trail. You feel the weight of your pack tugging at your shoulders, radio batteries, extra ammunition, claymore mines strapped down tight so they don't rattle. The air is hot, but the canopy filters the worst of the sun. Sweat runs into your eyes, stinging tastes of salt and insect repellent when it reaches your lips. You listen as much as you look. Boots on dirt, the soft slide of webbing, the rustle of gear occasionally brushing a leaf. Above that, the constant jungle symphony. A bird calls once, twice, then falls silent. The point man's fist goes up. You freeze, lowering into a half-crouch behind a tree, weapon covering your sector without conscious thought. In the quiet that follows, you hear it too. Voices. Distant, faint, a tone more than words. You ease forward until you can see the patrol commander. He glances back, taps 2 fingers to his ear, then points toward the sound. His other hand makes a small chopping motion. Down, stay low. You slide into the undergrowth, belly close to the earth now, pushing your rifle ahead of you, breath shallow. Through a gap between roots you see movement. Men in dark clothing, webbing, weapons, moving along a faint track parallel to your own. 30 meters, maybe less. They don't know you're here. You count them silently. 1, 2, 3. More behind, shapes overlapping in the green. Your finger rests on the trigger. The easiest thing in the world right now would be to fire, to shout contact and blaze away, to bring the weight of surprise and training down on an enemy who has exposed his flank to you. You don't, because that's not why you're out here, at least not yet. The first mission they run together is pure reconnaissance. A trail junction deep inside a known enemy movement corridor has shown up repeatedly in intelligence summaries. Porters pass there with rice. Small units transit between villages and base areas. It's a crossroads in more ways than one. The 4-man patrol's job is to watch it, find a hide, settle in, count, report. They reach it just after dawn, having moved overnight to avoid crossing trails in daylight. The junction itself is no more than a wider patch of ground where 2 narrow tracks meet under the trees. To the untrained eye, it's just another bit of jungle. To theirs, it's a story written in mud. Old sandal prints, bicycle wheel grooves hardened in dry patches, boot marks from enemy soldiers escorting a larger group days before. The patrol commander chooses a position off to one side, slightly elevated with good fields of view and natural cover. They build their hides small and tight, using what's already there, fallen branches, ferns, dead leaves, avoiding anything that looks artificial or freshly cut. Then they vanish. For 12 hours they lie in those hides. Enemy groups come and go. A 3-man courier team, a squad with full packs and weapons at the ready, a small group of women with baskets, likely carrying food forward. The 2 Australians focus on numbers, timings, weapons, direction of march. One Kiwi specializes in sketches, roughing the layout of surrounding tracks on his notepad, adding landmarks he can see. The other Kiwi does double duty as rear security and alternate signaler, ready to send if the primary radio goes down. They see potential ambushes all day. Single men lagging a little behind, a leader who stops at the junction to check his map, exposed for a full minute.
A section stacked up momentarily because someone slipped in the mud. They do not fire. They do not move more than they absolutely have to. In the late afternoon, when the light begins to go gray under the canopy, the patrol commander gives a nod. Time to leave. Back at base, the debrief runs long. Timings, numbers, directions, equipment, discipline levels. From that data, future operations are built. A blocking force here, an ambush there. Artillery concentrations planned where enemy traffic is heaviest. All of that begins with 4 men lying still in the dirt, watching other men walk past and choosing not to shoot them.
In stories told long after the war, small patrols like this are often painted as hunters, prowling the jungle for targets. The truth is quieter. They are listeners first. The Australians have a phrase, "You can't unfire a shot." Once your weapon barks, the enemy knows more about you than you do about him. Your position, your numbers if he's experienced enough to judge, your direction of movement. The patrol lives under a set of hard rules. You fire only if you must. You engage only when the advantage is overwhelming. You avoid contacts that might fix you in place without a clear escape route. Every man in the team understands the math. 4 men, no matter how well armed, cannot afford a prolonged fight against a platoon, or even a determined squad with good local knowledge. Their strength is surprise, and the ability to break contact before the enemy can bring weight to bear. Fire discipline becomes more than professionalism. It becomes survival. So they let opportunities pass. The New Zealand rear scout watches a lone enemy straggler stop to adjust his sandal strap and does nothing. The Australian sergeant sees a group pause under a tree perfectly framed in his sight picture and keeps his finger straight on the trigger. They are not pacifists. They are building something larger than a body count. They are learning. When they do choose to fight, it will be on their terms. And when that moment comes, as it does beside the creek, the enemy will discover what happens when days of patience are released in 5 seconds of violence. The second mission is different. Intelligence suggests a Viet Cong unit has been moving a platoon-sized force regularly between 2 base areas, always crossing the same small creek at the same point. Terrain channels them there. High banks upstream, swampy ground downstream. The Australians pick ambush positions with the same care a craftsman chooses tools. 2 claymores go in on the primary firing line, dug into the bank at a slight angle to rake the crossing. Firing cable is run back through vegetation to a firing point with a clear view. The Kiwis set up flank security and a secondary fire plan, mutually supporting arcs that will cover any survivors and deter a rush on the main position. Escape routes are plotted, marked silently with tiny, almost invisible cues that only they will recognize. Then they wait. Night insects, the quiet plop of something moving in the water, fish maybe, or something larger. Sweat cooling and then chilling on their backs as the temperature drops. Morning comes gray and flat. No movement. The day stretches. By late afternoon, the New Zealand rear scout stiffens. Sound. Feet in the bush. Voices. They slide into final readiness. Safety catches checked. Claymore clacker gripped in a steady, dry hand. Heartbeats counted down. The first man steps into view, moving cautiously down the track toward the creek, rifle on his shoulder, webbing laden. Behind him, more. The column forms as they bunch up slightly at the obstacle, men waiting their turn to cross. The Australian sergeant lets them come. 3 in the water, more on the near bank, others closing up behind. He breathes out slowly. Fires. The claymores detonate with a flat, violent crack.
The crossing erupts in a fan of steel balls, slicing through air, water, flesh. The men in the creek fall as if cut down by an invisible blade. In the same instant, all 4 members of the patrol open up, short, controlled bursts, picked targets, no wild firing. The fight lasts less than 10 seconds. Return fire is disorganized, a few panicked shots into the trees, high and wide. Those who can still move dive for cover without knowing where to shoot. The patrol commander calls a ceasefire as quickly as he called the ambush. Silence slams back into the world. They listen. No coordinated enemy response, no sign of a second, unseen element maneuvering against them. They move. 2 men cover while the other 2 sprint forward, grabbing what they can from the edges of the kill zone. Documents, radio handset, anything that looks like it holds information rather than just metal and cloth. They do not linger to count. In less than a minute, they're gone, ghosting along their pre-planned escape route, angling away from the creek into thicker cover where any pursuing force will have to move slowly and noisily. By the time the surviving enemy regroup enough to think about a chase, the jungle has swallowed the 4 men who did this. Later, among the papers taken from a dead platoon leader's body, ANZAC intelligence officers find neat handwriting, strength reports, movement logs, local guides' names, notes on planned operations. The creek becomes for that enemy unit a place to avoid. For the 4 men who were there, it becomes a memory of controlled violence. Short, sharp, professional, and over almost before it began.
Success changes how the enemy sees you. Word spreads of small, deadly foreign patrols operating deep in what used to be safe territory. Local commanders start instructing their scouts to watch for signs not of big units, helicopters, vehicle tracks, sudden civilian absences, but of quiet intrusions. Broken vegetation in the wrong direction, boot prints where only sandals should be. On a later mission, the 4-man patrol feels that change. They've been watching another trail, another junction, feeding back the kind of information that shapes operations. Extraction is a day away, when the point man notices something wrong. A footprint. Not theirs. Fresh. Cutting across their line of approach. The New Zealander kneels, studies it. Sandal, light tread. But the depth, the spacing, this is not a farmer wandering. It's a man moving tactically. Minutes later, they find another, closer to their own route. Somewhere out there, an enemy patrol is either crossing their path by chance or tracking them. They tighten up their movement. The Australian sergeant makes a decision with that flat calm that keeps people alive. They will not simply push on and hope. They will not sprint for the extraction point, broadcasting their path with noise. They will turn the situation. Using folds in the ground and dense vegetation, they execute a careful dogleg, then a loop, coming back onto their own trail from another angle. The Kiwis take the rear and flank, watching not just the bush ahead, but the path behind, alert for anything out of place. Eventually, they find it. A small mark, almost nothing. A toe scuff where someone checked direction, right in one of their old footprints. There's no doubt now. They're being followed. They choose their ground. A narrow finger of high ground with good fields of fire, flanked by rougher, noisier scrub that will channel anyone following into a predictable line. No claymores this time. Too much blast. Too much attention. Just rifles and discipline. Then they wait again. Time stretches. You lie there listening to your own breathing, feeling your pulse in your throat. Your world shrinks to the front sight, the patch of ground you've decided is your responsibility, and the knowledge that someone out there is doing their best to kill you. You hear them before you see them. Soft footfalls. A murmur. The click of something brushed against a weapon sling. Shapes emerge. 3. Maybe 4. Moving slow.
Careful. Weapons up. Their eyes are on the ground, scanning for sign, the very sign you left hours earlier. The patrol commander lets them come. Close. Closer. At the chosen point, he gives the signal. 4 rifles fire as one. 2 enemy scouts drop immediately. The others dive, return fire wild, unsure of where you actually are. The Kiwis on the flank shift positions, firing in short, precise bursts that prevent any organized counterattack. Again, the engagement is over in under 10 seconds. You don't stay. A quick search for documents, weapons kicked away, then you're moving, changing direction, putting distance and terrain between you and the contact before any larger force can close in. Later, in a captured notebook taken from another unit, there's a mention. Our reconnaissance team did not return. Evidence suggests they followed enemy sign into a prepared position. These foreign patrols are dangerous. They use our own methods against us. It's as close to a compliment as you'll ever get from an enemy who is trying to kill you. The Viet Cong prided themselves on being the unseen, the ones who moved by night, knew the tracks, slipped between the fingers of big foreign units. When small, mixed ANZAC patrols started peering, never in big numbers, always suddenly, always where they can do the most damage, that self-image takes a hit. Captured reports speak in careful, political language, but the undercurrent is clear. A district commander writes, Australian units in this area deploy very small elements with high fieldcraft. They avoid contact unless conditions favor them. They have been effective at ambushing our couriers and reconnaissance teams. Local forces are cautioned to assume they are always present, even when unseen. Another, referring to an ambush much like the Creek action, is more blunt. The enemy attacked swiftly and withdrew before we could respond. We believe only 4 men were involved. Their fire was accurate. Our soldiers are troubled by an enemy who can inflict such damage with so few. Among rank-and-file fighters, the stories grow legs. 4 foreigners in the jungle. 2 from the land with the kangaroos. 2 from a smaller island even further away. Ghosts. From the ANZAC side, the view is more practical. Australian infantry learn to trust the reports and instincts of the New Zealanders who come back from patrol with calm, matter-of-fact debriefs. New Zealand soldiers talk with quiet respect about the SAS men who seem to move through the trees without leaving sign. What both sides, friend and foe, recognize in their own way is this: 4 disciplined men, properly trained, can change the way an entire area thinks and moves. Not by being louder, but by being there, unseen, and striking only when it counts. War diaries and official histories don't tend to single out 2 Australians and 2 Kiwis by name. Instead, they talk about patrols, squadrons, companies. Between 1966 and 1971, Australian SAS squadrons in Vietnam conduct hundreds of patrols in Phuoc Tuy and beyond. The numbers are stark. Very high enemy casualties compared to their own. Fights measured in seconds, not hours. Operations where entire companies of enemy troops are shaped or destroyed based on information 4 or 6 men brought back. New Zealand infantry companies integrated into Australian battalions add their own lines to those diaries. Patrols in which their soldiers are noted for steadiness, fieldcraft, and that particular brand of dry understatement that says more than any formal commendation. Trying to put a figure on what one 4-man team achieved is impossible, but you can trace their fingerprints. A creek crossing, marked on a map with a circle and the word ambushed. An intelligence summary noting documents captured from platoon leader provided valuable insight into local force dispositions. A brief line in an after-action report. Contact initiated by SAS ANZAC patrol of 4 men. Enemies suffered heavy casualties. Patrol withdrew without loss. Those lines represent days of movement, hours of lying still, seconds of violence. They're written in dry language because that's how professionals talk about their work. Behind them stands a simple reality. In a war often measured in thousands of troops and tons of ordnance dropped, some of the most decisive blows were struck by teams you could count on one hand. Strip away the legend and the patchwork of flags, and you're left with 4 men in the bush. They hurt like anyone else. Feet swollen and white from constant damp. Shoulders rubbed raw under pack straps. Skin peeled and cracked by fungus that never quite dies, just retreats and flares again. Sleep comes in short, shallow bursts, 2 hours here, an hour there, always with boots on, always with gear in reach. Their nerves fray like anyone's would. Lying in a hide while a group of enemy soldiers passes within 10 meters. Feeling your heart beat so hard you're sure someone will hear it. Bitter taste in your mouth as adrenaline burns through whatever reserves you had left. What keeps them together is not a slogan or a speech. It's knowing, deep down, that the other 3 will do their jobs. The New Zealand rear scout doesn't fire too early. The Australian sergeant doesn't push on when it's time to pull back. The Kiwi on the gun line doesn't freeze when he has to fire the claymore. The SAS signaller doesn't choke when he has to whisper coordinates into a handset under pressure. Between Australians and New Zealanders, there is always banter. About accents, sport, whose beer is worse, which country's weather is more miserable. Out here, that humor turns into something harder and more useful. An Australian might mutter, "If I get hit, I don't care which one of you drags me, as long as you don't leave me for those blokes down there." A Kiwi might grin and say, "We'll drag you, mate. Your rifle too. Ours are better. We'll sell yours to them as scrap." Then the smiles fade. Weapons are checked. Final signals confirmed. The laughter leaves a kind of calm in its wake. Because under it all is a shared understanding. No one cares about nationality when the first shot cracks. You care about competence. You care about the man covering your flank. You care that when you squeeze the clacker in your hand or the trigger under your finger, the others will act without needing a shouted order. The war will end. They'll go home, some to Australian suburbs, some to New Zealand farms or small towns by cold coasts. They'll carry the usual ghosts, memories of faces, sounds, fragments of jungle. But they'll also carry a quieter thing, the knowledge that for a time, in a hostile place, they were part of a 4-man team that worked, that did its job, that came back. Not everyone did. The absence of those who didn't is part of the cost too.
The trails they walked now blurred. The creek where they set that ambush still runs, but the bank has shifted, roots grown over the place where the claymores sat. Villages have changed. Some are bigger, some are gone. Rubber trees have been replanted or cut, roads built where once there were only tracks. The jungle remembers in its own way. Scar tissue where bombs fell, rusted metal under the soil, fragments of webbing tangled in roots. But memory among the men is clearer. Veterans on both sides talk, when asked, about small patrols. Former Viet Cong recall times when comrades failed to return from what should have been routine movement. They speak of ambushes that seemed to come from nowhere, of radio sets whose operators died before they could send, of a sense that the foreign enemy could sometimes see right through the jungle. Australian and New Zealand veterans remember days and nights on patrol with men from across the Tasman, where the ribbing and jokes vanished at first contact, and all that mattered was competence and trust. Modern soldiers study what those four-man teams did. Not the mythology, but the methods. Small units, deep penetration, fire discipline, intelligence as a weapon, choosing when not to fight. They see the value of partnerships, of combining different national experiences and strengths into a single, cohesive patrol that is more than the sum of its parts. The story of two Australians, two Kiwis, isn't a single perfectly documented operation. It's a composite of many like it. Many four-man teams who stepped off into the green and did work that rarely made headlines, but often made a difference. In the end, that's their real legacy. Not medals, not speeches, but the quiet respect of professionals on both sides who recognize skill when they see it, even if they only ever saw its effects. In the dense, humid shadows of Vietnam, on narrow trails and beside muddy creeks, men from two distant islands walked together for a time, four shadows in the green. For the enemy who met them in the wrong place on the wrong day, they never stood a chance.